The air was thick with smoke, and the heart-wrenching sound of children crying filled the once peaceful suburban neighborhood. In the distance, raging flames erupted from the windows of Riverside Elementary, painting the sky in ghastly shades of orange and black. Parents and teachers alike stood outside in panic, some screaming for help, while others clung to each other in helpless despair. Amid the chaos, firefighters worked frantically to battle the blaze, though it quickly became apparent that not everyone could be rescued in time. At that very moment, Dwayne Johnson, dressed in a casual gray hoodie, dark joggers, and well-worn sneakers, was out on his morning run along the quiet streets. His steady pace abruptly faltered when the piercing sounds of alarms and anguished cries reached his ears. Without a second thought, he sprinted toward the growing crowd, eyes narrowing as he focused on the inferno that now engulfed his community's beloved school. A firefighter, his voice raw with urgency, shouted that there were still children trapped inside the building. The determination that had long defined Dwayne surged forward. While onlookers hesitated in fear, he broke through the barricade and charged headlong into the flames. There were no cameras rolling, no staged stunts, just raw, unfiltered courage about to be put on full display in real life. It all began on what should have been an ordinary morning. Dwayne had set out on his daily run through a quiet suburban neighborhood, bathed in soft sunlight, accompanied by the distant sound of children laughing and playing. His usual route took him past Riverside Elementary, a cheerful school famed for its bright murals and welcoming atmosphere. Inside, the day was in full swing. Teachers led engaging lessons, students chattered excitedly in hallways, and the cafeteria buzzed with anticipation as lunch was prepared. The building, adorned with colorful posters and lingering traces of fresh paint from a recent renovation, radiated joy and promise. Yet, beneath that vibrant facade, danger had been quietly brewing. In the depths of the school's aging kitchen, a small spark had ignited near the frayed wiring of an old oven. The initial flicker went unnoticed amidst the hustle of staff and students, but within minutes, flames leaped hungrily across a grease-stained wall. Thick smoke began to curl into the air, and a blaring fire alarm shattered the calm, sending shock waves of panic through every corridor. As teachers and staff hurried to usher children to safety, a trembling voice from one classroom pleaded for calm while trying desperately to corral the youngest students. Outside, parents arriving for midday pickups were met with the horrifying sight of dark smoke billowing from the school's windows. Within moments, the once lively atmosphere turned to utter chaos as panicked crowds gathered near the gates, shouting names and frantically calling out to confirm if everyone had escaped. Dwayne, rounding a quiet corner, stopped dead in his tracks as he witnessed a towering plume of black smoke filling the sky. His instincts immediately screamed that something was gravely wrong, and his jog quickly transformed into an all-out sprint toward the disaster. Dwayne's heart pounded as he closed the distance to the school, weaving through clusters of bystanders whose faces were etched with terror and disbelief. On the scene, firefighters battled the relentless blaze, their coordinated shouts mingling with the sounds of sirens and frantic cries. A distraught teacher, tears streaking her soot-smudged face, informed the fire captain that several children were still trapped inside. The voice on the scene was desperate. It was clear that amidst the chaos, lives were at imminent risk. Dwayne's gaze swept over the frenzied assembly of parents, overwhelmed firefighters, and terrified teachers, and he knew in that moment what had to be done. With every step, he could see faint silhouettes through the swirling smoke on the second floor of the school, small figures, perhaps children, still waiting for rescue. Their silent pleas spurred him onward. Without a moment's hesitation, Dwayne surged toward the barricade. He forced his way through the crowd, his stride resolute as he reached the front door of Riverside Elementary. The heat from the blaze was already oppressive, and the acrid smell of burning wood and chemicals stung his nostrils. But he pushed forward undeterred. A voice behind him, belonging to the fire captain, Captain Morales, a middle-aged man drenched in sweat and visibly overwhelmed by the calamity, called out urgently, "Sir, please, those kids are all we have time for." But Dwayne's expression was unyielding as he fixed Captain Morales with a steely gaze and demanded, "What's the situation?" His tone was calm, yet imbued with an unmistakable urgency that silenced any further debate. Captain Morales explained breathlessly that several children were still trapped on the second floor as the fire advanced rapidly. He described how the team was desperately working to stabilize the structure before launching a full-scale rescue, but time was slipping away like sand through desperate fingers. Dwayne's jaw tightened as he peered through the smoke-stained windows, catching glimpses of small, desperate movements, the shapes of frightened children moving sluggishly, accompanied by faint, muffled cries for help. He knew that every second counted. The weakened structure could collapse at any moment, and waiting for additional backup might mean sacrificing more lives. "I understand you need to stabilize the fire, but those kids can't wait," Dwayne said, his voice laced with urgency. "Let me help get them out. You focus on putting out the flames. I'll bring them to safety." Captain Morales hesitated, torn between protocol and the raw desperation in Dwayne's eyes, then motioned to a nearby crew member to hand over a damp cloth and a basic safety vest. "Take this. Just be careful," the captain urged, his voice a mix of concern and reluctant admiration. Dwayne nodded once, secured the cloth over his face to filter the searing smoke, and without further delay, ducked under the barricade and charged through the building's entrance. The inferno inside roared at him like a living beast, but he pressed on, determined to rescue every life possible from the merciless flames. Inside, chaos reigned supreme. The once familiar corridors of Riverside Elementary were transformed into corridors of terror as thick, choking smoke obscured nearly every step. Flames danced along the edges of the stairwells, and debris littered the floors in a grim testament to the raging fire. Dwayne moved with the confidence and precision honed by years of experience that had never anticipated a challenge like this in real life. As he crouched low to avoid the worst of the heat and falling debris, he called out in a steady, reassuring tone, "Is anyone here? Stay where you are. I'm coming to get you." His voice, resolute and compassionate, was met with faint, trembling responses that spurred him deeper into the inferno. Navigating the labyrinthine halls, Dwayne's eyes adjusted to the dim, flickering light as he scanned each classroom for signs of life. Soon he found a small group of children huddled in a room near the entrance, their faces streaked with tears and soot. A young teacher, her uniform disheveled and her hands trembling, struggled to keep the frightened children calm. Recognizing the urgency of the situation, Dwayne knelt to meet the children's eyes. "We're getting out of here," he said softly, "so hold hands and follow me, all right?" His words were a lifeline, a promise of safety amid the chaos. With the teacher's reluctant nod, the children rose and clustered around him as he led them back toward the exit. Outside, the commotion had grown even more frantic. The crowd that had gathered earlier erupted into shouts and cries as parents desperately searched for missing children. Tears streaked the faces of those who clutched their little ones tightly, while others wept openly, unable to comprehend the magnitude of the disaster unfolding before them. Amid the mass of terrified onlookers, Dwayne's figure emerged as a beacon of determination and calm. As he escorted the rescued children to safety, he briefly handed the exhausted teacher to waiting paramedics. But even then, his gaze remained fixed on the school. The inferno continued to rage, and he could not ignore the desperate cries echoing from within. "There are still more inside," he insisted to Captain Morales, who now hovered uncertainly at the edge of the chaos. "I'll go back for them." Despite the captain's frantic protests and pleas for him to leave the dangerous task to his trained team, Dwayne's resolve was unshakable. "You focus on saving lives here," he said firmly, "and I'll do what I must to get every child out." Clad in his protective gear, Dwayne turned back toward the smoldering building with steely determination. His heart pounded with every step as he ascended the charred stairwell, each floor a gauntlet of intense heat, collapsing beams, and suffocating smoke. Every cry from above, every muffled whimper sharpened his focus. In that moment, Dwayne was not a mere jogger or passerby. He was a guardian, a man willing to risk everything in order to preserve the fragile lives of those who depended on him. Reaching the second floor, Dwayne's eyes squinted through the thick veil of smoke as he searched for the source of the desperate cries. Faint silhouettes of small figures could be seen huddled near a classroom window, their trembling forms illuminated only by the sporadic flicker of flames. Without hesitation, he kicked open the door with a force that startled the children inside. The room was filled with the acrid scent of smoke and the constant roar of the blaze. Three children sat together, faces streaked with tears, while their teacher slumped unconscious against a desk. Instantly, Dwayne sprang into action, lifting the teacher with one arm while urging the children to follow him. "Cover your mouths with your shirts and hold on tight," he instructed in a voice that was both calm and urgent. He led them along a perilous path, guiding them past falling debris and circumventing pockets of intense flame. The stairwell beyond was barely accessible, as parts of it had already collapsed under the relentless heat. Dwayne paused to assess the risk. The remaining staircase, though intact, appeared unstable. His mind raced for an alternative escape route. Glancing around, he spotted a narrow corridor leading to a large window in a nearby classroom that overlooked a sturdy oak tree. "This way. Follow me," he ordered, motioning for the children to line up behind him. One by one, they climbed onto the ledge, their small hands clutching the window frame as if it were their only lifeline. With remarkable care, Dwayne helped each child secure their grip, whispering words of encouragement that cut through the roaring inferno. "Stay close and don't look down," he reassured them, his tone gentle yet firm. The gap between the burning building and the tree was perilous, but it was their only hope of escape. As they made their way down, the crowd outside erupted into cheers and cries of relief. Parents rushed forward, embracing their children with tearful gratitude as the rescued group reached solid ground. But even as relief washed over the scene, Dwayne's focus did not waver. He knew that more lives still hung in the balance inside the blazing structure. Before he could catch his breath, a sharp cry came from the upper corridors. His heart pounded faster as he realized that there were still children trapped in a classroom at the far end of the hall. Without pausing to offer solace to the relieved parents, Dwayne turned back toward the inferno, determined to bring every last child to safety. "I'm not done yet," he murmured, his eyes burning with resolve, as he prepared to re-enter the building where the flames raged with renewed fury. Inside, the chaos had reached a fever pitch. The once familiar halls of Riverside Elementary were now an obstacle course of swirling smoke, scorching heat, and falling debris. Dwayne navigated the treacherous interior with the steady precision of a man well-versed in danger. His senses were overloaded. The acrid stench of burning wood and plastic mingled with the bitter tang of smoke, and his eyes watered uncontrollably as he pressed forward. He could hear the desperate cries of children echoing from distant classrooms, each sound a spur pushing him deeper into the inferno. As he approached a narrow corridor blocked by a fallen row of lockers, his keen eyes caught sight of a flicker of movement beyond the barricade. "Stay close," he called out in a low, commanding voice, positioning himself to clear a path for those trapped behind the obstruction. With a powerful swing of a metal chair he found nearby, Dwayne managed to wedge open a gap between the fallen lockers, creating just enough space for a few small bodies to squeeze through. The children, faces etched with fear and determination, began to crawl toward the opening. "I'm here," Dwayne assured them, his voice steady and warm as he knelt beside them, gently urging them onward. One little boy whimpered as he struggled to pull himself along, and Dwayne carefully lifted him, holding him close to shield him from falling debris. "You're doing great. Just a little further now," he whispered, his words offering comfort amid the roaring blaze. Time was agonizingly short. The building's structure groaned under the relentless assault of the flames, and every passing second threatened to bring the ceiling crashing down. Dwayne's mind raced as he calculated his next moves, knowing that any delay could cost precious lives. He reassured the children, each word a promise that they would soon be safe. "Hold on tight and follow me," he repeated, leading them down a corridor that promised a path to an exit. The corridor's walls were charred and unstable, yet Dwayne's unwavering determination propelled him forward. As he neared a doorway at the far end of the hall, a sudden crash of falling plaster sent a brief moment of panic through the group. Without skipping a beat, Dwayne shielded the children with his body and pushed them toward the door, his own heart hammering in his chest as he braced for the next impact. Bursting through the door, Dwayne and the group found themselves in a classroom that had become a temporary haven from the relentless heat. Here, a few more children were huddled in a corner, their eyes wide with terror. The teacher, barely conscious, lay slumped against a desk. Dwayne knelt swiftly, checking for injuries while urging the frightened students to remain calm. "You're safe now," he repeated, his tone firm yet filled with empathy. Even as he gathered the last of the stranded children and guided them toward an alternative exit through a side window, his mind was already racing ahead. He knew that every life rescued was a victory against the inferno that threatened to consume everything. The classroom, with its cracked windows and scorched floors, bore witness to his relentless determination, a determination that would not rest until every child had been pulled from the jaws of disaster. Outside, amid the chaos and pandemonium, the crowd's relief was palpable. Parents enveloped their children in tearful embraces, while neighbors and strangers alike offered words of gratitude and admiration for the man who had risked everything without a second thought. Dwayne emerged from the school's smoldering remains, his clothes caked with soot and sweat streaming down his face, but his eyes shone with a quiet resolve. Captain Morales, who had been coordinating the rescue from a safe distance, approached him, disbelief mingling with respect in his voice. "Sir, I've seen brave men in my time, but what you did today, that's beyond bravery," the captain said, shaking his head in awe. Dwayne simply nodded, modestly dismissing the praise. "I just did what needed to be done," he replied, though everyone around knew that his actions transcended ordinary heroics. Yet even as the rescued children were ushered to ambulances and reunited with tearful family members, Dwayne's eyes were drawn back toward the burning building. High above, on the upper floors where the flames still raged the fiercest, a group of terrified children waved frantically from a narrow window. Their voices, faint yet insistent, pierced the night air, a desperate plea for help that could not be ignored. Without pausing to collect himself, Dwayne turned back to Captain Morales and said, "There are still more inside. I need to get them out." The captain grabbed Dwayne's arm, his tone urgent. "You're insane! That upper floor is completely unstable." But Dwayne's jaw set in determination. "I have to. These kids have no time to waste," he insisted, already moving back toward the entrance with his makeshift mask and gear. Inside once more, the inferno had only grown more ferocious. Dwayne's path took him upward, through corridors now shrouded in choking darkness and the relentless roar of collapsing structure. His every step was measured, his senses acutely aware of every shifting sound. A distant crash, the scuffle of falling debris, the quick, staccato footsteps of panicked evacuees. The heat was unbearable, burning at his skin, yet he pressed on as if propelled by an inner force. Along the way, he encountered pockets of resistance, a section of the ceiling that buckled beneath a surge of flames, a corridor blocked by a wall of smoldering rubble. Each obstacle only intensified his resolve to reach those still trapped. "Hold on, I'm coming!" he would shout, his voice echoing through the fiery halls. At a critical juncture, he came upon a narrow flight of stairs, partially obscured by smoke and debris. There he found two more children huddled in terror, their faces lit by the flickering glow of the fire. Dwayne knelt, speaking softly to soothe their panicked hearts as he gently gathered them into his arms. "You're safe now," he promised, guiding them down the precarious steps as if every move was choreographed in a life-or-death dance. The stairs groaned ominously with each step, but Dwayne's focus never wavered. With each child successfully ushered to a safer area, a flicker of hope seemed to replace the overwhelming fear that had once gripped the school. Outside, the relieved cheers of the gathered crowd merged with the relentless sounds of sirens and crackling flames, forming a haunting symphony of survival. Once the last of the children were safely out and the injured teacher was handed over to the paramedics, Dwayne paused just long enough to catch his breath. The scene outside was one of bittersweet relief. The blazing ruin of Riverside Elementary served as a stark reminder of both the fragility and the resilience of life. Amid the throng of tearful parents and anxious onlookers, he could sense that his actions had rekindled a long-dormant spirit of community. Neighbors who had once looked on in silence now spoke in hushed, awed tones about the heroism they had witnessed, their voices trembling with gratitude. Yet even as accolades were offered and hearts mended, Dwayne's mind was not at rest. He knew that his duty was not yet complete, surveying the chaotic aftermath. Dwayne noticed that amidst the jubilant reunions, a fire captain's eyes were fixed on the burning silhouette of the school, a grim expression marking his features as he acknowledged the loss and devastation. Captain Morales approached Dwayne again, this time with a mix of relief and urgent curiosity. You saved so many lives today, but there are reports that the fire is spreading faster in certain sections. We're not sure if we can contain it all. Dwayne's gaze hardened as he listened intently. Tell me exactly where, he demanded, already formulating a plan in his mind. The captain pointed toward the back of the building, where heavy smoke billowed from the science lab and adjoining hallways. Without a moment's hesitation, Dwayne steeled himself and turned back toward the inferno. I'm going in again, he stated plainly, his voice carrying a quiet authority that brooked no argument. The captain grabbed his arm, protest flashing in his eyes. You're risking your life again. Please, let our team handle it. But Dwayne's resolve was unyielding. These kids need me, he replied firmly, his tone leaving no room for negotiation. Retrieving a damp cloth and a basic safety vest from a supply cart that had been left behind, he refitted himself and dashed back inside. Within the oppressive, choking corridors of the school, every step was a battle against the swirling smoke and searing heat. Dwayne's eyes, straining against the darkness, searched for any sign of life. At one point, he paused near a collapsed doorway, hearing soft cries that seemed to emanate from a room blocked by fallen debris. He pried open a gap with the back of his hand and discovered a small cluster of children huddled together in terror. It's okay, I'm here, he whispered, easing them out one by one and urging them to cling to him as they navigated the treacherous passage. Their small hands gripped his as they moved, each step forward a defiant act against the destructive forces that threatened to engulf them all. Dwayne's heart pounded, not just with the physical strain of the rescue, but with the overwhelming knowledge that every life he saved was a victory against the cruelty of fate. Outside, the crowd's cheers grew louder as the rescued children rejoined their waiting families. But for Dwayne, the mission was far from over. The roaring flames still clawed at the upper floors, and he knew that every lost cry might mean another life hanging in the balance. Emerging once more into the open air, Dwayne paused at the school's edge as the chaos began to subside. The flames, though still ravenous, now danced more sporadically, their orange glow casting long, trembling shadows over a crowd united in relief and mourning. Parents embraced their children tightly, their voices a cacophony of thank yous and prayers, while firefighters continued to douse stubborn pockets of fire with relentless determination. In the midst of this communal exhale, Dwayne felt no pride in the accolades he received. His actions were driven purely by an unyielding sense of duty and compassion. I just did what had to be done, he would later say quietly to anyone who tried to praise him. But as he stood there, scanning the scene for any sign that someone might have been left behind, his keen eyes caught a distressing detail. A faint cry coming from the upper floor where the flames still blazed the brightest. His heart sank momentarily. Without waiting for orders or permission, Dwayne turned back toward the smoldering structure. There are still kids up there, he declared to Captain Morales, who watched with a mix of admiration and worry. The captain hesitated, torn between protocol and the palpable need to save every life. Sir, that floor is unstable, he began, but Dwayne interrupted with a curt, I have to do this. Inside the upper level, the building was barely recognizable. Thick black smoke choked every corridor, and the relentless crackle of flames was punctuated by the ominous groan of collapsing structures. Dwayne moved cautiously yet purposefully, his every step measured against the danger. In a classroom near the far end of the hall, he found a small group of children gathered near a window, their eyes wide with fear and desperation. Their teacher, though injured and barely conscious, had managed to shield them as best as possible. Dwayne quickly assessed the situation. The window was their only escape route. All right, listen to me, he said firmly, kneeling in front of them. I'm going to help you get out. I need you to stay close and follow my instructions exactly. With his voice echoing over the roar of the inferno, he guided the children to form a single file line, their tiny hands clutching each other for support. Cover your mouths with your shirts and don't stop, he ordered, leading them to the window. The gap between the building and the sturdy oak tree outside was perilously small, but Dwayne's steady resolve made it seem almost surmountable. One by one, he helped the trembling children climb out onto the ledge, offering gentle words of encouragement that seemed to fortify their will to survive. As the last child made his way to safety, and the group reassembled on solid ground, the assembled crowd outside burst into rapturous applause and cheers, a moment of communal catharsis after the heart-wrenching ordeal. Yet even as the rescued children were reunited with their tearful families, Dwayne's mind remained fixated on the carnage that the fire had wrought. He knew that while the immediate danger had passed, the scars of this tragedy would linger in the memories of all who witnessed it. In that moment, he resolved that his actions, though seemingly heroic, were but a small part of a larger, ongoing commitment to protecting the vulnerable, a commitment that would shape his every step from that day forward. As twilight fell and the flames of Riverside Elementary finally succumbed to the relentless efforts of the firefighters, the neighborhood slowly began to breathe a collective sigh of relief. The acrid smell of smoke was gradually replaced by the bittersweet aroma of damp earth and the distant promise of rain. Parents and teachers worked together to comfort the traumatized children, while local volunteers and community leaders organized emergency shelters and support services. Amidst this poignant scene of recovery, Dwayne Johnson quietly slipped away from the limelight. His face, still streaked with soot and marked by exhaustion, told the silent story of a man who had risked everything to save lives. But he never sought recognition for his deeds. In the days that followed, the heroic actions of the mysterious rescuer spread like wildfire through social media and local news outlets. Newspaper headlines lauded his bravery, and countless neighbors spoke in hushed, reverent tones about the man who had defied the flames to rescue the children of Riverside Elementary. Yet Dwayne remained elusive, preferring anonymity to fame. For him, the true reward was in knowing that every frightened cry had been silenced, every desperate plea answered. He spent those turbulent days visiting the community centers, offering quiet words of encouragement to the survivors, and helping organize rebuilding efforts for the school. The once devastated building, now a symbol of both tragedy and resilience, would soon be reconstructed, a testament to the unbreakable spirit of the community. One afternoon, as the sun dipped low and cast long, gentle shadows over the recovering neighborhood, Dwayne found himself alone on a quiet street corner. He observed the small groups of people talking animatedly about the events, their voices soft but imbued with hope. A young mother, holding her child close, expressed her gratitude in a whispered conversation with a neighbor, while a local teacher recounted how the heroic act had rekindled the children's will to learn and play. In that moment, Dwayne allowed himself a brief pause, a silent acknowledgement that the ripples of his courage had indeed spread far and wide. Yet deep within him, a familiar fire still burned, a quiet resolve that propelled him forward. He knew that true heroism wasn't measured by public accolades or fleeting fame. It was defined by the willingness to act when the world demanded it most. As he prepared to leave the neighborhood and resume his quiet life of anonymity, Dwayne cast one final lingering look at Riverside Elementary. Its charred walls and smoldering remnants now bore the scars of loss, but they also shone with the promise of new beginnings. In that duality, he found solace, a reminder that even in the face of overwhelming darkness, hope and unity could prevail. With a final nod to the resilient community, Dwayne vanished into the gathering dusk, his silhouette merging with the night. His heroic deeds would remain etched in the memories of those he had saved, a beacon of compassion and selfless courage in times of crisis. And though he would never seek the praise of others, the legacy of his actions would serve as a powerful reminder that in every moment of despair, one person's determination could indeed spark a revolution of hope and healing. In the days and weeks that followed the devastating fire at Riverside Elementary, the community slowly began to rebuild. Not only their shattered school, but also the fragile bonds that had been tested by tragedy. Local news outlets continued to report on the miraculous rescue, and while many tried to uncover the identity of the elusive savior, Dwayne Johnson remained a ghost, his true self concealed behind a veil of modesty and quiet heroism. Neighbors, parents, and teachers banded together to launch relief efforts, organizing fundraisers, counseling sessions, and volunteer rebuild crews to restore the once thriving institution of learning. Amid this collective healing, the legacy of the man who had risked his life to save so many children became a touchstone for hope and resilience. On a crisp autumn morning, as the new Riverside Elementary took shape, a modern facility built with community support and innovative safety measures, small groups gathered to commemorate the event. They hung banners that read, "Courage in the Face of Fire," and organized a mural project on one of the exterior walls. The mural, vibrant and full of life, depicted a phoenix rising from smoldering ashes, a symbol of rebirth that resonated deeply with everyone who had experienced the catastrophe. In whispered conversations and heartfelt speeches, the name of the unknown hero was mentioned with reverence. Though he himself was never seen or confirmed, it was as if his anonymity elevated his legend, making his sacrifice a universal reminder that real heroes act without expectation of reward. Yet behind the public commemoration, Dwayne remained restless. The flames of that fateful day had not only ignited a physical inferno, but also stirred memories of every time he had confronted danger in his life. For him, the act of running into the burning school was not a choice. It was a calling. In quiet moments of solitude, he replayed the events over and over. The piercing cries of the children, the desperate pleas of the teachers, the overwhelming surge of determination that had pushed him to break through barriers of fear and smoke. Those memories served as both a burden and a beacon, reminding him that the world was fraught with injustice and suffering, and that there were still souls in need of protection. One evening, as dust settled softly over the recovering neighborhood, Dwayne found himself walking along a quiet street lined with trees and freshly painted sidewalks. The cool air carried the scent of fallen leaves and new beginnings, and he couldn't help but reflect on the interconnected nature of tragedy and hope. In every life he had touched that day, he saw the possibility for transformation, a chance for a community to unite and for individuals to rediscover their inner strength. It was in those moments of quiet introspection that he resolved to remain vigilant, to always be ready to step in when darkness threatened to overwhelm the light. Though Dwayne never sought recognition and deliberately avoided the public eye, the whispers of his courageous deeds echoed far beyond the boundaries of that one fateful day. His quiet heroism inspired others to take action in their own lives. Neighbors who had once been mere bystanders began organizing neighborhood watch groups and community safety initiatives. Teachers incorporated lessons of resilience and cooperation into their classrooms. Even local government officials reevaluated the safety protocols for public buildings. In this way, the legacy of that terrifying fire was transformed into a legacy of unity and hope, proving that even in the face of unspeakable tragedy, the human spirit can rise, rebuild, and transform despair into a powerful force for good. As the rebuilt Riverside Elementary finally opened its doors to a new generation of students, Dwayne Johnson remained a silent guardian in the background, never seeking accolades, always driven by an inner conviction that doing what is right is its own reward. His actions that day not only saved lives but reshaped an entire community, proving that one person's determination can spark a lasting movement of compassion and solidarity. With each life that was saved and every heart that was healed, the ripple effects of his bravery continued to inspire a world in need of hope and unity. And though he eventually slipped back into the anonymity he so carefully maintained, the memory of that extraordinary day and the promise of his quiet heroism lived on as a beacon for all those who believe that even in the darkest moments, courage can light the way.